Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So, let's begin the discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen seven important articles for a detailed and comprehensive analysis so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Now, before we start, I have a very important announcement. Those of you who are preparing for the civil services exam, you find current affairs to be the biggest challenge. Most of the subjects which are part of our prelims and main syllabus, they are very dynamic. And if you look at previous questions in prelims and mains question papers, they're heavily influenced by current events. So to help you prepare for current affairs effectively, we are launching one of the country's biggest free current affairs initiative, a monthly current affairs program which would be available on the Unacademy Platinum platform. Under the Platinum program, you will have the opportunity to not only look at the educator live, but you will keep your cameras on as well to establish a two-way communication with the teacher. The idea is to replicate the experience of an offline class where the teacher can check what the student is doing, whether you're paying attention in the class or not, and hold you accountable and ensure a better seamless communication between the educator and the students. So please ensure you make use of this golden opportunity. This program of monthly current affairs, this would be subject based current affairs taught by the respective subject expert educators. The program starts from 26th of July, and we will be covering current affairs from multiple sources, including Hindu, Indian Express, the PIB, and various important magazines. So everything would be compiled together with practice questions for prelims and mains, and you will get the detailed notes as well. So those interested can enroll for the upcoming current affairs session. These sessions will happen every weekend for your convenience, especially to help working professionals and even college going students. Every Saturday, Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Those interested, please enroll for it, and the link is provided in the video description. Now, if you want the PDF of this session today, please scan the QR code and join my Telegram channel. After the session ends, I'll be sharing the PDF over here. Now, let's begin by first looking at this important article on page number 6. This column, written by Syed Akbaruddin, deals with the regulation of AI at the global level. Many of you might recognize Syed Akbaruddin, a former Indian diplomat from the Indian Foreign Service. He served as the Indian permanent representative to the United Nations, and for a long time, he was the official spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs. So, based on his expertise, he talks about the role of India in contributing towards AI regulation, how India can make a positive contribution to ensure we restrict the harmful usage of AI while ensuring that we promote innovation, research, and development to make AI more democratic, inclusive, and ensure it contributes to overall development of humanity. So, in this context, you should understand why this topic is in news. The topic of AI regulation at the global level is in news because next year, in February 2026, India will be hosting the AI Impact Summit. India will be playing host to the AI Impact Summit next year, and this gives India a leadership position to shape the regulation of AI. So let's dive a little deep into this topic, move beyond the article as well, and understand everything related to this important topic. The topic is very important for science and technology, even for international relations with regard to the geopolitics surrounding the regulation of AI. So in 2023, the first ever global summit on AI was held. It was hosted by the United Kingdom, known as the AI Safety Summit. The UK played host to the first ever global summit on AI in 2023. And this summit was held at Bletchley Park. Now, this was quite symbolic because Bletchley Park is a historic World War era monument. This is where British cryptographers and mathematicians working for the British Secret Service, led by the legendary Alan Turing, managed to break the encryption of Nazi Germany. The Enigma codes, the Lawrence encryption codes were broken by the cryptographers and mathematicians working at Bletchley Park. So, at this historic location, the United Kingdom hosted the first ever AI safety summit to focus on the risks associated with artificial intelligence. See, the emergence of AI, particularly large language models, generative AI tools, has posed several risk factors. Today, AI presents several opportunities for the industry, for democratization, for upliftment of millions of people. Because technology can be a great leveler, it can create a level playing field. But the same transformative, disruptive technology in the wrong hands can be misused with devastating consequences. So, if AI is transforming the industry and leading to the fourth industrial revolution powered by data, it is transforming the way we work, the way we learn, and essentially the way we live. And the day is not far where almost every aspect of our day to day life would be defined by AI algorithms. This is something which is likely to happen in the very near future. It's no longer the stuff of science fiction. But this permeation of artificial intelligence across industry, its usage in government programs, including for cybersecurity, warfare, etc., it raises many potential risks as well. The biggest concern with the introduction of AI is the possible misuse of AI tools, how it can easily enable scams and frauds, how it has become very easy today to generate voice clones, for example, or to be misused by cyber fraudsters who can place these fraudulent calls and extort money from their victims, or how deep fakes, how these hyper realistic audio visual media which is being generated, how it can be circulated on social media to even trigger riots, civil unrest, etc. How it can be used to defame people or target certain individuals, how it can threaten data privacy, or how AI tools can even be misused for a potential terror attack, and how AI is already being integrated into weapon systems, especially autonomous weapon systems, and how AI is making a big inroad into warfare. So, this raises many potential risk factors, including the apocalyptic scenario, which often is predicted, where potentially humanity might lose control over AI tools, leading to the violation of human rights, leading to the misuse of such technologies, those who control them, and how they could potentially bring an end to civilization as we know it, to democracies as we know it. So, AI does represent a major security risk for democratic systems. It represents a risk for human rights. And there is a more real risk of the exclusivity attached with AI, resulting in exclusion of those who do not have access to the technology. Poor countries, developing, underdeveloped nations of the global south, they could be entirely left out. And the developed, industrialized nations, they could draw the full benefits of AI to further take a leap ahead of other developing, underdeveloped countries, which could further increase the developmental divide between countries, the rich and poor countries. Then within a country, the income divide, the social divides could increase, where the wealthy will have access to these critical technologies while leaving out the lower sections, the underprivileged sections of the society. So the potential lack of inclusivity is something which is considered as a major risk factor, a more realistic risk factor with AI. And also the sustainability of this technology, environmental sustainability. Because to run these AI programs, massive data centers are needed. The startups and the companies around the world which are pioneering AI, they rely on these advanced chips, AI chips, the graphic GPUs, the graphic processing units, which consume tremendous amount of power, raising the demand for electricity, increasing the possibility of emissions and pollution as far as the environment is concerned and the climate is concerned, which could in turn contribute to global warming. Whether the world is capable of dealing with the demand for power, because AI companies' data centers are power guzzling centers. They can consume as much power as an entire city. And this demand for power, electricity, will only increase exponentially in the coming years. The question is, how will governments be able to deal with the rising power demand? Will we be able to provide the required electricity through clean, renewable sources? Or will the world move back towards fossil fuels, which is easier and cheaper and does contribute to more pollution and emissions, which could significantly harm our environment? So, what will be the environmental footprint, the climate footprint of AI? So, all these risk factors are being debated, considered at the global level through these summits, which are taking place at the global level. In 2023, the AI Safety Summit that was hosted by UK focused on these risk factors, especially the misuse of AI, the security risks associated with AI. And it led to the adoption of the Bletchley Declaration. The Bletchley Declaration was brought out. Now, this was followed by the AI Summit in Seoul, South Korea, where the focus was on setting up a AI Safety Research Center to focus on safe AI tools, ensure that harmful AI is kept out of public domain and not even developed or brought out into the public domain, to place restrictions on AI companies, the tech startups, and even governments to limit the development of harmful AI tools. Then earlier this year in 2025, France co hosted the AI Action Summit with India. Prime Minister Modi attended the event as well with French President Emmanuel Macron. And as a co host, India played a role at the AI Action Summit in Paris in bringing out an agreement which was adopted by some of the participating countries. But however, these events, these three summits which have already taken place, it clearly highlights the geopolitical divide between the major global powers. Because on one hand, authoritarian states like China, they are preferring greater state control, where government controls all aspects of AI development and strictly restricts and regulates AI companies and AI technologies. Whereas on the opposite end, you have countries like United States and United Kingdom, which did not even sign the joint declaration that was adopted at the Paris AI Action Summit, because they believe that excessive regulation could stifle innovation. They favor a more liberal regime where government should not interfere excessively and regulate the sector excessively, as it could cripple innovation in a key sector. So these are the two polar ends, the opposite ends, when it comes to the debate on AI regulation. Many of you who might have covered this event in current affairs, you might remember US President JD Vance participated in the AI Action Summit in Paris, and he lashed out at the other members publicly in blatant disregard for diplomatic niceties. And he said any excessive regulation will stifle innovation and hurt research and development in the AI domain. Whereas China is at the opposite end, calling for greater government control and state control. And in between, you have Europe, led by the European Union, which has already established a legal framework. It has become the first region to adopt a AI Act. Recently, the European Union has brought out a AI legislation, a legal framework to regulate AI in the European market. And this law strikes a decent balance between the need for strict regulation, especially with regard to harmful AI, and the need to promote innovation and research and development. If you look at European Union's AI Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act, it actually prohibits the development and rolling out of harmful AI technologies. It places some restrictions on those AI tools, like facial recognition algorithms, for example, from being misused, and provides for accountability and checks and balances. While it promotes a liberal regime for development of inclusive, sustainable AI tools which can positively contribute for human development. It accounts for the impact of AI on democracies, on human rights. So European Union's mechanism is seen as some sort of a model law. In fact, the EU has a very good track record in this regard. It became one of the first regions in the world to bring out a legislation on data protection, the GDPR, which became a model for many other countries when they brought out their data protection laws. The European Union has been pioneering laws and regulations in the field of technology, in the field of digital technology. So in this case as well, right, EU has taken the lead again. Even if you look at regulation of tech companies, the big tech companies, and regulation of social media, internet based platforms, the European Union has been setting a precedent, and the world has been following this precedent. So many countries, including India, they would prefer this middle path. We wouldn't want authoritarian state control like what China prefers. We wouldn't want complete liberal regulation, which US and UK are trying to push for to favor their companies. Because don't forget, those countries which control critical AI tools will be controlling the future. This is sort of a race, a geopolitical race which has begun. Given AI's application in the economy, across industries, AI's application in security, warfare, governments have made this a national priority. They want AI tools to be developed as a sovereign project where governments can employ these tools to further their geopolitical interests. That's why you are witnessing this AI race between global powers like US and China. And there are many other middle powers competing with them as well. So this is where the debate on AI has essentially splintered the global community. The global community has been divided on these lines, on ideological lines. While the development of AI tools continues, the misuse of AI tools continues. So this is where the writer says that India has a golden opportunity next year when we host the AI Impact Summit, the fourth such global summit in the field of artificial intelligence. The first was hosted by UK, second by South Korea, third by France. India was the co-host at the third AI Action Summit. In fact, in this year's prelims, UPSC already asked a prelims question on the AI Action Summit. So now India is going to host the fourth AI Summit, the AI Impact Summit next year. Now, India has an opportunity to bring together all the major powers, the tech companies, and create for the best possible regulatory framework so that we can use the potential benefits of AI while restricting its misuse. In fact, India has already started the process. The Ministry of Electronics and IT has last month launched a public consultation process as the government is preparing to host next year's AI Impact Summit. India has invited feedback from the industry, from students and academia and experts. The government is consulting with the civil society and the public domain. And this has already democratized India's approach towards AI regulation. This presents a great opportunity for India. Now that we are open to receiving feedback from all the stakeholders, we are ensuring that all stakeholders are represented at next year's AI Impact Summit. India can definitely bring a big change around, reduce the divisions which are present at the global level, and ensure that we create the most effective framework for regulating AI. The writer says that India can raise the voice of the global south. The global south is being left out of this debate. Neither UK nor France nor South Korea, which hosted the previous summits, gave adequate representation to the developing, underdeveloped world. Now, India, which has been a champion, a leader of the global south, can definitely raise their concerns regarding the lack of access to these high end, critical, and emerging technologies. Very few countries are controlling the developments in AI, be it the production of these GPUs by companies like NVIDIA, or be it various algorithms and machine learning programs which are being pioneered by companies in US, mainly centered in the Bay Area of San Francisco, or in China in Beijing and Shanghai. Very few countries, few cities are able to have this dominating control on AI tools while limiting access for rest of the world. Because investments in AI is super expensive. Not every country can afford it. India itself has been caught many steps behind when compared to rivals like US, China, and others. India has launched the AI mission, the India AI mission, where the government is spending up to 10,000 crores to create the essential infrastructure that is needed to build the data centers and procure the advanced GPUs, which can then be rented out to the tech companies and the AI startups in India. The government itself has taken the lead in our country to create the foundation infrastructure for championing AI research. But India is still many steps behind. So you can imagine the plight of other poor countries, developing, underdeveloped nations. So this will further perpetuate the global north versus global south divide. The developmental gap will further increase between the rich and the poor countries. Then we were talking about the environmental impact, the lack of inclusivity and the lack of sustainability of AI. Now, this is something that India can help address. India has sufficient expertise in these sectors. India has given leadership during climate change negotiations, for example, and we can use those lessons to not divide the global community, splinter them, but bring them together to work out a reasonable, effective framework which focuses on protection of democracies, protection of human rights, while ensuring that AI tools are not used for harmful tools, or it's not misused for warfare or committing cyber crimes. Instead, it should be mainly focused on providing for better development, better socio-economic development. So that is the solution that India can try to work out. And based on this, you can definitely anticipate a question, a mains question as well. Like, what could be India's role in AI diplomacy? How can India champion a global regulatory framework in the field of AI? Because as the host of next year's AI Impact Summit, India will have that leadership position. Can India raise the voice of the global South countries? Can India bring these splintered countries together and lead them to, agree to a common framework, which strikes a good balance between regulation and focus on innovation? So let's take up a question based on this. As the host of the AI Impact Summit next year, India can set the course, steering AI for the public good. Discuss. So, as I promised, in every Hindu analysis session, we will be discussing the answer writing approach for the first question, so that it should help in your answer writing practice. Now, for this question, you can have two types of introduction. Either you can talk about the brief history of the AI summit. In one paragraph, you can briefly give an introduction about the three past AI summits that have taken place, right? Just quickly mention the outcomes and how India hosting the next AI Impact Summit, the fourth summit, is a significant pivotal moment for India. That can be one introduction. Or you talk about AI in general, talk about the benefits and the harm that comes from AI. You don't have to give all the details here. Just express your viewpoint that AI is a transformative, revolutionary, disruptive technology. It has many applications. It can transform the way we live, the way the industry works. At the same time, it raises several very serious risks which could be threaten democracies and human civilization itself. So, without the details, just mention your viewpoint about how AI is like a double edged sword. And then in the body, you can list out the benefits and risks in detail. Maybe draw a table if you want, or in two separate paragraphs, talk about the benefits of AI, the risk factors, the need for global regulation, and under the topic of global regulation, you have to discuss how the world is divided when it comes to how AI needs to be regulated. Point out the divide between countries like China and US, how they don't agree, and how US and UK didn't even sign the declaration at AI Action Summit. So present the challenge and then discuss how India can present a way forward, how India can ensure a fair, effective regulatory framework, how we can address the divide, bring the countries together, give a voice for global south, address the concerns regarding inclusivity, sustainability, right? Mention that and then you can conclude your answer. In the conclusion, you can give out an optimistic view that AI can indeed have a transformative impact, but also strike a note of caution to bring some balance into your answer. Express a note of caution how AI can represent a severe threat. There is a need to regulate it, but without stifling innovation. So bring out that balance. Don't favor excessive government regulation, which is what China wants. Don't favor complete liberal framework as well, which is what the US is preferring, because that only benefits the capitalist tech firms and those governments which control these technologies. So try to take that middle path which suits India's interests, and that would make for a good conclusion. So let's see if you guys can write an answer and please post your answers in the comment section. Now let's look at the next article, again related to the field of technology. This is related to harmful online content for minors and why there is a need for age verification while providing access to online content. Now, this is a much debated issue around the world. Today, with the spread of mobile phones, high speed internet, one of the biggest challenges that societies around the world are facing is how our children, who are minors, children as young as 8 years old, 10 years old, even younger sometimes, they have access to mobile phones and internet, right? Families encourage this as well. And eventually, this is making our children, the minors, vulnerable to various risk factors. They might be getting exposed to extremely harmful content. It could be pornography, it could be leading to online addiction, social media and gaming addiction. For example, if you look at even the not so harmful videos on YouTube, the rhymes, the cartoons, the animated videos, to which many infants are hooked onto, right? Parents think of it as a easy way to keep the children distracted or while feeding them or to keep them calm. But what they don't realize is that most of these videos are designed to develop the habit of addiction, to deliver that dopamine hit. That's why the vivid colors which are used in these videos, the quick transitions, and essentially they are playing with human psychology to keep the children hooked onto this content. And this is raising a very serious concern about how we are getting our children hooked onto digital content and even online gaming and social media content. And this could even lead to dangerous addiction, the development of addictive behavior, leading to severe psychological problems as they grow into adulthood. They could be exposed to extremely harmful content, explicit content at a very young age when they don't understand uh, the nuances of, let's say, sexual intercourse, right? Getting exposed at a young age to explicit images, pornography, or even extremely violent content is something which has a deep traumatic effect on the emotional well being of a child. And this has a long lasting impact as they grow into adulthood. Plus, there is a risk of children getting exposed to strangers online. Potentially, pedophiles might start chatting with them, they might groom them. We have seen such incidents in many countries. For example, in the UK, recently, a horrific scandal broke out where several pedophiles were cultivating and grooming young minor children, right, through social media platforms and essentially pushing them to engage in pornographic acts and explicit acts. So, this is the biggest challenge that is facing governments around the world today, right, when it comes to digital content. Now, the question is, how do you ensure that minor children don't have access to these platforms? So, this is something that European Union is trying to address on a war footing. Again, the EU is at the forefront. As I told you in the previous topic, the EU has taken the lead compared to any other country, any other government when it comes to regulating digital technologies. Be it the GDPR, which was a pioneer law in the field of data protection, or the AI Act for AI regulation, and even regulating the big tech companies and online social media firms, EU has always been a global leader. Now, on this matter, recently Australia has placed a complete ban on social media for children below a certain age. France is considering a similar proposal. Australia has already brought out a ban on children accessing social media if they are not of a minimum age. France is proposing a similar idea. In fact, French President Emmanuel Macron has personally supported this proposal to bring out a ban on children under the age of 15 years from accessing social media. Now, the question is a complete ban the appropriate path? More importantly, how do you enforce such a ban? If at all you have to place a gate to prevent children from accessing these harmful sites and platforms, right? What mechanisms can be created? What regulatory legal measures are needed? What technological changes are needed? How do you implement them? See, the question is primarily about age verification, right? For any law, for any technological gateway which has to be created to ensure only adults have access to certain sites and content, it's important to ensure that there is age verification. Now, how do you implement this in a foolproof manner without compromising the right to privacy? Because when you're mandating that users have to establish their age to access online platforms, online content, this could lead to questions of data privacy, data protection being compromised, right? For adults who have a right to access the content they want, unless and until it is harmful for the society or it is responsible directly for security situations, right? Any other content would be accessible for adults, including explicit content. Now, forcing adults to reveal their age when there is a age verification criteria could raise the concern of a breach of privacy. There is definitely a risk if there is a gateway created, right? Let's say when sites are being accessed, it could be pornographic sites, it could be sites with any adult content, right? Or even social media, just in general for that matter. When a gateway is created, when some sort of age verification tool is implemented, if adults are mandated to get their age verified each and every time, there is a potential risk that these tech companies might use the data to monetize it, to profile the adults, track their patterns and behavior, raising the risk of breach of data privacy. Yes, there are data protection laws in place, especially in Europe, to prevent uh, any such breach of data privacy. But the mandatory age verification could become a big hurdle in accessing essential sites and technologies as well. So now the question is, how should age verification be implemented? See, there is no doubt that there should be some form of restriction, some form of gateway mechanism through which children are prevented from accessing these platforms and technologies. So, how exactly should it be done? What should be the legal mechanism? What should be the technological implementation of it? Because this should not become a barrier for accessing technology for accessing digital platforms. It should not lead to a breach of privacy for adults. It should not create a loophole for tech companies to exploit and misuse the user data for monetization and tracking the patterns and behaviors of the users. This balance has to be struck, and that is what the European Commission is trying to work out. What is the European Commission? The European Commission is the executive organ of the European Union. It's one of the primary organs of the EU. It's the executive organ of the EU that plays a role in drafting laws and regulations, implementing the regulations and laws that are passed by the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union, and laying out the framework which has been approved by the European Council, which consists of all the European leaders. So, European Commission is like the executive branch that implements these laws, regulations, and policies. So, it is trying to work out a mechanism, legal and technological mechanism, to implement age verification gateways for minor children. Some suggestions are that this verification of age should not be done at the website level. Let's say if the law mandates that every website, every digital platform have to implement age verification gateways, then that will become a big barrier for accessing technology, right? It could deter people from accessing several sites as they fear getting their data compromised, their privacy compromised. So, some experts are suggesting that age verification should happen at the device level, that is, at the level of the mobile phones, the laptops that users are using. What they are suggesting is that parents can ensure that they can only procure these devices which are considered appropriate for minor children. Right? There are such gadgets available. For example, if you look at wearable uh, watches, the digital watches, there are specific watches with very limited features, only with calling features, with some basic games for children, which is considered as safe, with no other access. There are phones available today with such operating systems and browsers, such that children can't by default access any harmful content. By default, these devices have a restriction. So that is something which should be made the norm, where device manufacturers should build in these features from the scratch itself, and parents procure these devices for children, ensuring that they will never ever have access to such technologies or such platforms. Instead of forcing adults to reveal their age, asking every user to verify their age, it is better to do it at the device level, at the level of the operating system, at the level of the manufacturing of the device, where the devices for minors is different from that of the adults, where there is by default age restriction built into devices, browsers, and operating systems. So this is considered as a much better way of implementing this age verification gateway to keep minors away from harmful content. So let me know what you think on this debatable topic. Because, see, in India, there is no debate at all on this. We are, again, many steps behind. When Europe is already considering these regulations, Australia has already taken some steps. India is still many, many steps behind in this regard. So let me know what you think about this and take up this practice question for your answer writing practice. Now, moving on, let's talk about a very interesting article from Environment and Ecology. The topic is related to man animal conflict. So let's break down this topic in complete detail. Very, very important for your mains exam. And I'll be covering few facts for prelims as well. So please pay attention and listen to me carefully. This article is highlighting recent incidents of tiger attacks in the Chandrapur district in Maharashtra around the Tadoba Andari Tiger Reserve. Tadoba Andari Tiger Reserve, which is in Maharashtra, is one of the largest protected areas in the state of Maharashtra, very close to the borders with Madhya Pradesh. And if you look at the history of this protected area, the Tadoba region has always been home to tribal communities like the Gondi community. The Gondi tribals were known for their traditional practices like hunting, They used to hunt wild animals for a livelihood. They used to collect minor forest produce for a basic livelihood. The practice of hunting was prohibited in colonial times itself. The environmental laws placed a restriction, thus affecting tribal rights. In 1955, Tadoba region was declared as a national park by the government of India, which brought further restrictions and prohibited human activities in the core area and restricted the activities in the buffer zone. Later, in 1986, the neighboring Andari region was declared as a wildlife sanctuary, mainly because of the biodiverse uh, distribution that was present here, the diverse distribution of flora and fauna, the presence of various threatened species, led to the declaration of the Andari Wildlife Sanctuary adjacent to the Tadoba National Park. And eventually in 1995, both were merged to establish the TATR, Tadoba Andari Tiger Reserve, which basically consists of a national park and a wildlife sanctuary. If you look at the geography of this protected area, you have the Tadoba Lake along with the Andari River, which is seen as the lifeline of this protected area. This is the primary source of water. Then, if you look at the biodiversity present here, there's a very rich distribution of flora and fauna. You find a tropical dry deciduous type of vegetation and various animals, birds, reptiles calling this their home, from the mugger crocodiles to leopards, tigers, the sambar deer, sloth bears. There's a very rich distribution of wildlife in the Todobandari Tiger Reserve. Now, the region around the tiger reserve, especially around the Chandrapur Tiger district near the tiger reserve, is where people have been facing multiple attacks from tigers in recent years, and this has become a pressing concern. Now, the first question is, why are these tiger attacks becoming more and more common? What is the extent of the problem, the scale of the crisis that is being witnessed? What are the causative factors, and what are the solutions to it? Based on this, you can even expect an entire essay topic. Man animal conflict is a great essay topic which UPSC can ask for 125 marks. Or you can expect a environment ecology question in GS paper 3. Right? So let's break this down. Let's understand what's happening here. Now, if you look at the data, it's quite alarming. In 2024, 20 plus people were killed because of tiger attacks. Around close to 190 were injured. And this year, the numbers are equally alarming. Already in the initial few months, 20 plus local villagers have already been killed by tiger attacks, and almost close to 150 people have reported getting injured because of tiger attacks. This is the scale of the problem. In the last 5 to 6 years, 900 plus tiger attacks have been registered, 900 plus people have been injured, and around 100 to 120 deaths have been registered. Now, this is posing a big risk for the tribal communities, the tribal way of life in this region. See, since hunting is now prohibited for tribal communities under the Wildlife Protection Act, their livelihood is entirely dependent on the collection of minor forest produce, which is a basic right guaranteed to tribal communities under the Forest Rights Act of 2006. So, under the tribal rights, which is extended under the Forest Rights Act of 2006, tribal groups have a right, even in protected areas, especially in the buffer zone, to venture out and collect minor forest produce. They collect tendu leaves. Now, this is a major occupation for tribal communities like the Gondi community. What are these tendu leaves? It's essentially the ebony, the Indian ebony leaves. They're used for rolling BDs. They are also said to have nutritious value and used as fodder for cattle, which are reared by the tribal communities. It is also said to have medicinal properties and used by tribal communities. So there is a commercial value attached to tendu leaves, which are collected deep inside forests by tribal communities. This is the primary source of livelihood for them. They also collect wild fruits, berries, honey, etc. And on the exterior of the protected area outside of the buffer zone, local villagers will even carry out basic farming, agriculture to sustain their livelihood. So when the local villagers are venturing out for these activities, right? They're venturing into the outskirts of the forested area or sometimes deep inside the forest as well. And this is what is exposing them primarily to these incidents where they are facing off with the wild animals, especially the tigers. And the reason why tiger attacks have seen a significant jump in last few years is because the density of tigers, the tiger population in Tadoba Andari has seen a significant jump. Thanks to our conservation efforts, from around 191 tigers in 2020, we have seen a significant jump. Today, there are close to 347 tigers which are recorded under the All India Tiger Census in Tadobandari Tiger Reserve alone. Essentially, the number has almost doubled. Very soon, the number can cross 400. And this is a very high density of tigers. Now, while this is good news for environmental conservation for Project Tiger, this increases the territorial competition between the tigers, because such big cats, they're usually solitary animals, right? And they're highly territorial. Each tiger, according to an expert, will need at least around 40 square kilometer of forest land so that they have access to enough prey, so that there is sufficient prey base and they don't run into conflict with other tigers or other animals. But today, this area has reduced significantly, and around 40 square kilometers of forest area is now being shared by four tigers, right? In an area where one tiger should be ideally present. Today, we have a situation in Tadobandari Tiger Reserve where there are four tigers sharing the same space, increasing the chances of territorial conflict. So, this territorial conflict is reducing the prey base available. It's leading to competition, fights between the tigers, and some of them get pushed out by the more dominant ones, especially the female tigers, along with her young cubs, face the brunt of this competition, and they get pushed out, and this pushes them to venture out into human settlements and those areas which are inhabited. The other major challenge here is growing urbanization, deforestation, and the fragmentation of the habitat. The core and buffer habitat, which is supposed to be protected, is witnessing severe fragmentation, mainly because of linear infrastructure projects, which is being pushed by the government. For example, construction of major roads, right, through these protected areas or around them, the laying of power lines, and other such linear infrastructure projects. They are directly threatening the, the uniformity of the habitat, preventing tigers from crossing over and moving around. And this restricts the space available to these wild animals. And also, please understand, a mother tiger is extremely protective of her cubs. The moment they sense a threat, they will attack, not to eat the humans. Many of them are not man eating tigers. They're not doing it for food, right? They're doing it out of fear. Yes, they do attack cattle, dogs in the local villages, causing economic losses for the local community. But the attacks on humans is primarily a result of these changes which are taking place in the habitat. The problem doesn't lie with the animals, it's with humans who have ventured into their habitat. And the problem is we are not able to tackle these problems, be it the sudden rise in density of the tigers, right? Plans were never made for these protected areas to accommodate such a large tiger population. We didn't anticipate the consequences. And now, fragmentation of habitat, urbanization, growing population in these rural village areas, tribal belts, is posing a significant administrative problem and a environmental conservation problem. So, this is where the writer is suggesting that the only way forward is to involve the local community, spread better awareness, use them as part of the conservation efforts, and compensate the locals if they suffer losses. Parallelly, take measures to prevent these incidents from happening by stepping up patrolling, stepping up surveillance. That's what the forest authorities are trying to do. They have laid hundreds of camera traps to maintain real time surveillance to spot the movement of tigers. Today, drones can also be deployed to keep aerial surveillance to monitor the movement of tigers. And alerts can be given out to the local tribal members and villagers, as most of them have mobile phones. Messages can be sent out in real time, warning them about tiger movement near inhabited areas. This is something that the forest authorities, the administration is trying to experiment with. They've already put in place hundreds of camera traps. Now they are considering the usage of drones along with real time alerts being disseminated with stepped up patrolling. See, other short term solution is shifting out some of the tigers. But this is not sustainable. Problem is in India, when tigers are shifted out, especially when tigers which have carried out attacks, they are often not accepted by other national parks and other wildlife sanctuaries. So they end up being discarded in zoos. They end up being pushed into these contained habitats, right, which directly threatens their well being. And as you know, the condition of Indian zoos, they're not really looked after, taken care of. It limits their movement as well. And this raises a very serious concern about animal rights as well. More than 40 such tigers, which have been caught here in Tadobandari, which were held responsible for these attacks on humans, they have been pushed into zoos around the country where today they are facing horrific conditions because they are not accepted in other national parks and tiger reserves given their history. So, this is a very challenging situation as far as India's tiger conservation efforts are concerned, right? So, the need is to protect the habitat, ensure the territorial competition is limited, engage the local community, make them participants in the conservation effort. If at all they suffer losses, compensate them immediately. Because locals should not hold any grudge against the animal, right? If let's say a tiger has killed someone, injured someone, or caused financial losses to the tribes and farmers, usually the locals who might get angry, they might take it out on the animal. This could increase in incidents of hunting and poaching. But usually, tribal communities they revere nature and the wild. They worship animals like the tiger, and this is something that the forest authority should work upon. Bring greater coordination between local communities and conservation efforts. Make them stakeholders and participants in the conservation efforts to tackle these incidents of man-animal conflict. Technology can play a big role in helping evade the direct contact with animals, right? So, some sort of perimeter protection can also be given for nearby villages. They can be fenced off, and trenches can also be dug, and the safe electric fencing can also be used, which is not harmful to the animal as well. So, all these methods will have to be adopted. The solution doesn't lie in simply catching these tigers and shifting them out to zoos. That doesn't work, right? So, this is what is necessary to deal with rising incidents of man animal conflict. Now, coming to the next article on page 12, we have this article related to voting patterns at United Nations. It's a small article, but gives us a very interesting update on how voting at the UN has been changing, how India's voting pattern has shifted. That is something we can get to learn from this article. So, at the United Nations, the data shows that India's rate of yes votes has declined to 56% as of now. In 2024 2025, we have seen a big decline in the number of yes votes cast by India. It has come down to just 56%, which is the lowest ever number of yes votes that India has casted on UN resolutions. The abstention, that is where India abstains from voting, where we neither vote yes nor no, and instead we abstain from casting a vote, taking that middle path, the middle ground. The abstentions have gone up to 44%, registering a major increase, a significant increase in abstentions from India. Now, this trend, this pattern that we are noticing with regard to India's voting at the UN is a clear indicator of changing global dynamics. It shows the world today is more and more divided because of conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza, and how countries are at loggerheads with each other. It shows India is dealing with a divided world order, pushing India to use the option of abstention more and more, reducing our yes votes very significantly. Now, if you look at the past, there are three distinct patterns which can come out from India's voting patterns at the UN. In the initial years, from let's say 1946-47 till 1960s, during that first period, you will see that our yes votes were significantly higher compared to the abstentions. But there was a lot of fluctuation, lot of volatility in the manner in which we were voting during the period 1950s and 1960s. The yes votes ranged from 20 to 100%. Some years our yes votes were 100% in almost all the UN resolutions. Sometimes it would drop as low as 20% as well. Whereas abstention would fluctuate between 0 to 40% roughly. That again showed how the world was divided, mainly because of the Cold War divisions, the Cold War rivalries which had taken root, and how India had opted for the path of non alignment. This led to serious fluctuations in India's voting patterns. Then came a stable period from roughly around mid 1970s to mid 1990s. During this period, there was more stability seen in India's voting pattern with a consistent high number of yes votes with very, very minimal abstentions from India. Meaning, India was taking a decisive call to support most of the UN resolutions during this period, and abstentions were at a very, very low number. From mid 1990s to 2019, that is in the last 20, 25 years, let's say, again we saw a slight shift in our voting pattern with yes votes ranging between 75 to 83%, abstentions rising between 10 to 17%, which was more sustainable and more balanced. But now we are again witnessing a shift, a move back towards that volatile period. Our yes votes have declined to 56%, seen as one of the lowest in recent times, and abstentions have risen up to 44%. So, this is what indicates a more divided world order today. It also points out India's preference for the middle path in diplomacy. Because, see, please don't underestimate the value of abstention. Don't think abstaining from a UN vote is indecisiveness. Don't think India is weak and not taking decisions. That's why we are abstaining. No. Deciding not to vote either ways in itself is a very big decision. It's a strategic call. This aligns with our policy of multi alignment. Abstention helps India maintain that balance, bring some stability in a divided world, and further our multi aligned policy where we work with different countries who are on the opposing sides of the current rivalries. This is what allows India to maintain close ties with Russia while working with United States. This is what allows India to maintain close ties with Israel while working with the Arab states. So India has been able to maintain that delicate balance because of its policy of abstention on certain key UN votes. And experts also point out that today the resolutions have become more complex. See, historically, resolutions were very simple. They would focus on maybe one particular issue. So, depending on India's interests, India's ideological inclination, we would either decide yes or no and immediately cast our votes. If India aligned with it, we would definitely back the resolution. If we did not, we would try to defeat the resolution. It was as simple as that. But today, these UN resolutions have become more complex. Each resolution today is dealing with multiple issues being pushed into it. And though we agree with, let's say, 90% of the issues, India might agree. India might be willing to vote yes. But problem is there will be this one or two provisions, the remaining 10% which is pushed by other countries, where India will strongly disagree, and thus it will prevent India from casting the yes vote. And then the best option is to abstain. This is also a factor. Now, I can give an example to help you understand this. When the October 7th terror attack took place in 2023 against Israel, when Hamas carried out this brutal attack against Israel, where it slaughtered close to 1,300 Israeli civilians and took 200 plus hostages, India clearly called out this attack as a terrorist attack. India backed Israel to defend itself against terrorism, while India has never labeled Hamas itself as a terrorist organization. So then a resolution was pushed at the United Nations, pushed by Canada and few other countries, which was referring to the incident, condemning this incident, but they never called the incident a terrorist attack. Now, India agreed with the entire resolution where such acts of extremism was being condemned. The right of countries to defend themselves was being recognized. India supported all these provisions, but there was one provision which India strongly disagreed with, because this resolution, which was mainly drafted by Canada, did not refer to the incident as a terrorist attack. There was a clear hesitation seen in the resolution from calling out this attack as a terrorist attack. So India strongly disagreed with this because this could have implications for India. India itself is a big victim of terrorism. So for India, it's important for such extremist acts to be called out against civilians as terrorist attacks explicitly. Now, since the resolution was not calling it explicitly as a terrorist attack, India abstained from the vote. If not for that one clause, India was ready to vote for it. It was asking Israel to show restraint. The resolution was urging Israel, demanding Israel not to go to war in Gaza. India was ready to support that resolution. But the reason why India abstained at the last minute was because of just one provision, which refused to call this attack as a terrorist attack. So this complexity in international relations today, the growing divisions, the growing rivalries, and the conflicts that are raging has created more complexities for India's position. That is why our abstentions are growing significantly and our yes vote has reduced. Is that clear? So please understand this pattern, and it gives you an insight into current geopolitics as well. Now, coming to the last section for today, the prelim section, let's take a quick look. On the first page itself, we have a reference to Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra. Chinese envoy to India has pointed out that Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra is an important cultural initiative between India and China that promotes our cultural diplomacy, cultural ties. Because recently, the Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra has been restarted after 5 years. Restarted after a long time. It had come to a complete halt, first because of COVID-19, and then because of the Ladakh military standoff. The persistent border tensions had brought Kailash Manasarovar Yatra to a complete halt. So since last year, since India China have resolved the Ladakh military standoff, resumed some normalcy in their relations, and brought down the tensions with regard to the border standoff, we have restarted the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra, and the first batch of pilgrims have already undertaken this historic pilgrimage to Mount Kailash and Lake Manasarovar. Now, please understand, Mount Kailash, which you see here in the map, which is located in Tibet, that is in China, essentially, and as well as Lake Manasarovar, that you see here, Lake Rakshasthal as well, they are considered to be extremely sacred in multiple religions, not just in Hinduism, even in Buddhism, Jainism, and the indigenous faith that you see in Tibet, in the Himalayan region as well. Many indigenous mountainous faiths, tribal faiths as well, they revere Mount Kailash and Lake Manasarovar. There's a lot of spiritual significance attached with it. So, India has been trying to encourage the pilgrimage to Mount Kailash by organizing the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra in coordination with China. So, it's an initiative organized by Ministry of External Affairs in coordination with the government of China, the People's Republic of China, which facilitates the pilgrimage, along with the provincial governments, the provincial administration in Tibet, and as well as the state governments of Sikkim and Uttarakhand. This historic pilgrimage has now resumed again, and there are two routes which are used for the Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra. That is something you should be familiar with. See, the MEA organizes this entire travel and visit. It's not that any individual can visit, right? Private tour operators are strictly prohibited. It's entirely organized by the government itself. Though private tour operators, they help the pilgrims and tourists in registering and in applying for the process. Eventually, once the tourists are selected based on their health condition and other criterias, eventually it's the government which organizes the visit with the help of all the concerned authorities. So there are two routes which are used for Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra. There is one route via the Lipu Lake Pass, located on the borders of Nepal, India, and China. India has recently built a road, a strategic road, Darchula Lipu Lake Road, that gives all weather connectivity across the stretch. This was inaugurated in 2020. Now, before this road was built, reaching Lipu Lake itself was a big challenge for the pilgrims. There was extensive trekking involved on the Indian side, even before reaching the Chinese border. And after crossing over into Tibet, there was extensive trekking here as well around Rakshasthal and Lake Manasarovar to eventually reach Mount Kailash. So this route is generally considered more difficult, especially for senior citizens and older pilgrims. Right? You need to be more physically fit to be able to undertake this journey through the Lipu Lake route. That's why the other route is considered to be much easier, the Nathula route, through the strategic Nathula Pass in Sikkim. Because through Nathula, the pilgrims can directly access the highway that has been built in Tibet by the Chinese government. There is a motorable road that reaches almost till the tip of Lake Manasarovar and Mount Kailash. The trekking involved is very, very less. The physical strain is very less through this route, even though it's a longer route. There is a motorable road available, better amenities, better tourist facilities are created here by the Tibetan administration as well. That's why the MEA prefers this route to be allotted to senior citizens and those with health conditions. And the more younger pilgrims who apply, they are sent through the Lipu Lake route. Next, coming to page number 10, there's an article on the removal of judges, the process of removal of judges. Because recently we saw a shocking incident. A judge of Delhi High Court, Justice Verma, Justice Yashwant Verma, was essentially caught red handed at his house when there was a fire accident. And when the fire emergency services arrived to defuse the fire, what they uncovered was absolutely shocking. They found bundles and bundles of cash in the house of a judge, a senior judge at the High Court. And this led to an inquiry by a Supreme Court appointed panel, right, headed by the then Chief Justice of India, and which indicted the, the judge in question. And eventually, Justice Yashwant Verma refused to resign despite very clear evidence being present against him. So, this has eventually led to the initiation of what is popularly referred to as the impeachment proceedings at the parliament. So, now the government is working with the opposition to push this proposal to get the judge removed. The judge in question has now been transferred to Allahabad High Court and placed off duty. And since the judge has refused to resign, the government, the parliament is initiating the required measures to get the judge removed from his position. Now, there is another similar case, not of corruption, but a judge where controversial statements were made on communal lines. Again, a judge of Allahabad High Court, Justice Shekhar Yadav, had recently passed few highly communal remarks, which is unbecoming of a judge from the higher judiciary. Hence, the opposition is pushing for his removal as well. This is where you need to understand the process of removal of a judge. See, one of the core features in a constitutional democracy is the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary needs to be independent to a certain degree and ensure that the executive and the parliament can't interfere with the functioning of the judiciary. So, in terms of removal of a judge, that's why there needs to be added protection. A judge of the higher judiciary cannot be easily removed. either by the parliament or the executive. That's what helps in maintaining the independence of the judiciary. But at the same time, there should be a process to hold the judges accountable, right? If judges have shown proven misbehavior, proven incapacity, if they're no longer fit to serve in this high office, they need to be removed as well. So there are such certain provisions. If you look at Article 124 and 218, that deals with Supreme Court judges and High Court judges respectively, it provides for the removal of these judges, the removal of judge of a Supreme Court and removal of judge of a High Court respectively. Article 124, Article 218. The grounds for removal is proven misbehavior or incapacity. But however, please note, the Constitution itself does not explicitly use the word impeachment. Though this word is popularly used by the media, by many experts as well, right? They say that impeachment proceeding has been instituted against a certain judge. But the word impeachment is not explicitly used in the Constitution. You can't find a mention of the word impeachment in the Constitution with regard to removal of judges. The Constitution refers to removal of a judge following a certain process, and the process is laid down under the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. This law passed with the Parliament details the entire process to be followed for removal of judges. According to the Constitution, a judge can be removed only by the order of the President of India, as the President is the appointing authority. Right? To secure the independence of the judiciary, the Constitution ensures that none other than the President can issue the order calling for the removal of a judge of High Court or Supreme Court. And this order of the President is not at the discretion of the President, or it's neither at the discretion of the government. It is based on a motion passed by both houses of the Parliament, passed by both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So, what is this process? Let's take a quick look. Now, if a judge is accused of such impropriety, if there is proven misbehavior, incapacity on the part of the judge, it could be a case of corruption, sexual harassment, right, etc., or any act which is unbecoming of a judge who's holding a high constitutional office, then the removal process can be initiated in the Parliament, either in Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha. But there is a condition. To initiate the process, in case of Rajya Sabha, at least 50 MPs have to sign the motion. In case of Lok Sabha, this motion for calling for removal of a judge should be signed by 100 MPs. That's the minimum criteria. This again guarantees independence of the judiciary. It ensures frivolous removal proceedings are not initiated. Only when such serious cases come up, right? The government, opposition, everybody can come together in the Parliament to push for such motions. So you need minimum 100 members to back a motion in the Lok Sabha, and if it's in the Rajya Sabha, 50 MPs have to back it. So now the motion which has been adopted by the Lok Sabha against Justice Verma in this corruption case is signed by more than 100 MPs of the Lok Sabha. So once the required support is gained and the motion is introduced in the Parliament, in either of the houses, then a investigative committee is constituted. A 3-member investigative committee is set up by the Parliament. Then based on this report, which is submitted by the investigative committee, voting is taken up in both houses of the Parliament on the grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity. And if this resolution is passed with a special majority in both the houses, and then the order for removal is issued by the President of India. So first, a motion is introduced in the house where the motion was adopted. It was introduced in Lok Sabha. The motion is first taken up in the Lok Sabha itself. And it requires a special majority, meaning majority of total membership of the House, 50% and above, and 2/3, not less than 2/3 of members present and voting. So once passed by, let's say, Lok Sabha, then it passes to the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha again has to, go through the resolution and provide a special majority, vote on it with a special majority. So once special majority is gained in both the houses and the resolution has been passed, then it moves to the President. An address is presented to the President calling for issuing this order of removal, and the President issues the order of removal for removing a judge. So till date, no judge has been removed through this process. Though some cases have come up. For example, former Chief Justice of India Ranjan Gogoi also faced such proceedings, but no judge has ever been removed on these grounds through this process. So let's see if Justice Yashwant Verma might become the first, because there is incontrovertible evidence, red-handed. He's been caught red-handed almost. So this is a very important case as far as the judiciary, its transparency and accountability is concerned. Now, coming to the last topic for today, before we wrap up the session, Syria has seen brutal fighting over the past week on ethnic lines. Massive violence has occurred between the Druze community and the Bedouin nomadic tribes. So please make a note where the clashes have occurred, what are its implications. These clashes between two ethnic groups has taken place in Suveda, which is in southern Syria. You can see that in the map. So mark this location, very important for places in news. See, right now, Syria is under an interim government because last year, the Syrian regime under Bashar al Assad was toppled by a radical terror organization known as HTS, Hayat Tahrir al Sham, which was headed by Muhammad al Julani. The HTS has now formed an interim government, and al Julani has himself become the Syrian interim president. And now he goes by the name Ahmad al Shara. This transition government in Syria under President al Shara has promised to bring stability back in the country, end sectarian violence and targeting of minorities, and bring back stability and even introduce elections in the coming days. Right? Al Shara has even met with global leaders like Donald Trump and started striking deals with the US. So now this conflict, which has been reported, is one of the most serious conflicts that has been seen. As we discussed the other day, I've covered this topic partly in one of the previous sessions. The Druze, they represent a minority, ethno-religious minority in the region. They are Shia Muslims found in Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and they are found in Golan Heights, which is illegally occupied by Israel from Syria. So they are very loyal to the state of Israel. In fact, Druze community members are part of Israeli defense forces as well. That's why when Druze community was attacked by the local tribes here, by the Bedouins and the other militias, Israel came out in support of the Druze minority and launched direct attacks against Syria. It bombed Damascus and various vital installations in order to pressurize the Syrian government to act. Now, who are the Bedouins who are involved in this conflict? The Bedouins are a Arabic nomadic tribe. The Arab-speaking nomadic tribe found across West Asia, from Oman to Jordan to Syria to Iraq and Saudi Arabia, across the West Asia region, you find the Bedouin community, a nomadic tribal community, right? And they're essentially they represent the Arab population. So there is a history of conflict between the Bedouin tribes and the Druze minorities. So this conflict has escalated with the involvement of several radical militias targeting each other, and up to 1,000+ people have been killed. Right? Violence has been committed by both sides. There have been Druze militias which have attacked the Bedouin tribes, and Bedouin militias have attacked the Druze minorities as well. So this conflict has now reached a truce. A sort of a truce has been worked out with the mediation of the interim government in Syria. There has been pressure from Turkey, Israel, and others to bring this conflict and clashes to an end. So that's why the city of Suweda has been in the news. So please be aware of this ethnic conflict in Syria. So, on this note, I bring my discussion to an end. I hope the detailed analysis has been useful and beneficial. And do let me know if you like the session in the comments. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.